Yo, what's happening, guys? You're listening to the Sales Pen podcast, and I'm your host, Mighael Jerome Shane. And today we've got a really special guest, Mr. Rahul Wadhwa. So, Rahul, welcome to the podcast. Well, the funny story, he's supposed to be introducing me, but I hijacked
you stole the thunder. I'm sure his intro was much better than all of our previous intros combined. So great job done there.
Time for some upgrades.
I think you already impressed everyone who's going to watch this one. Okay, how are you doing, man, today?
Doing very well, Rahul. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I mean, super excited.
I am super excited to host you. I think I have tons of questions. I think we've known each other for like 6, 7, 8 months, maybe.
Yeah, 6, 7, 8 months through via LinkedIn. Yeah.
Right. I think I do keep a tab on good SDRs.
Good
I'm trying to be that guy from Taken, right? I'll find all the good SDRs whenever I can.
Like, I haven't really watched the movie. I haven't really watched the movie.
You haven't watched the movie? Okay, never mind. All right. He reminds me of one of my other SDR. I can't recall the way you laugh. It's exactly like the same. I mean, if I could close my eyes, I'd be like, I'm talking to him. Anyways, so I think, like I said, I want to start on the note that you are, I think, the first SDR who has probably started a podcast from India.
Oh, wow.
I've not seen a single SDR, especially.
Wow.
Starting that, so that's a great achievement already there. I see that you've hosted like a couple of people. I would want you to talk about like what got you started. You were just asking me what got me started, and you already got my answer. Now you tell me.
Looks like we're turning tables, but the reason I even got started with that podcast is, one, I realized I suck at cold calling, and being an SDR, I think one of the major things that you need to nail. I mean, so cold calling is something that let me take it a little back. So backstory was, I was in field sales at Uber Eats, and I was signing up all these restaurants. So there, it's high velocity sales. So per day you get to close like 4 or 5 accounts, and you think you're a great salesman, even without learning about any new skills. Because look, you got Swiggy, you got Zomato, just another addition. So there was nothing crazy about selling there. So it was pretty easy. I think I got a little too cocky, a little too taken away. I was like, good, sales is my thing, and I can easily pull it off. And there I go, my first job at Lead Square, and I still remember. Huge fan of Wolf of Wall Street. I think I watched that like 16 times in a row, and I thought, like, first day when I pick up the phone, I'm gonna sound as smooth as Jordan Belfort. Like, the reason for my call today, John, is I thought that's how I'm gonna pull it off, but complete 360. I resisted the phone for almost, I think, 6, 7 months there.
Wow.
It was just, occasional calls. I used to pick up calls like here and there, but it wasn't like, hey, I'm gonna sit and, do a cold call blitz. And that was something that made me want to get away from being an SDR. So I wanted to quit being an SDR. I didn't really like that because, cold calling was something. And then I just realized, if there's one thing in life, it's just not cold calling if you look at it, right? Anything in life. The only 2 things that keep people away is, one is fear. Rejection. And around this time, I happened to read these, so I'm big on these pickup books and stuff like that. So a book called The Game. And just reading that, you realize, like, even the best pickup artists in the world do get rejected day in and day out. So even if you do master your art, you can't control the outcome, right? The only thing you can get good at is what you do. So that's all. And ever since, that was something that I was struggling with, handling rejection. But then, I started applying a couple of tips, just going out, just, interacting with random people on the street, just saying hi to strangers. I still remember, like, I haven't done as many as I wanted to, but I think I've, like, spoken to 6, 7 strangers in a row. And, first was pretty terrible, first 2 pretty terrible, but eventually you get the hang of it, and then you feel so pumped that, you keep doing more sets.
How did you survive without cold calling for 6, 7 months?
Emails, and it was a lot of LinkedIn, and, a lot of voice notes and stuff like that. So these were sporadic calls, right? It wasn't like, hey, I'm setting a time, every 1 hour.
Like a call blitz or something.
Yeah, so if I had a number, pick up the phone, give a call. If I don't have the number...
So it was very strategic, and I might say, if I wouldn't want to sugarcoat this, that, you would probably pick who you want to call, not call a list.
Very
If
picky.
you have 100 prospects, you will not call everybody. You'll be like, hey, this guy is probably opening my email twice or thrice.
I just respond to him.
Based on the engagement, you would probably take that call.
Exactly, and like, especially, I used to do this pretty terrible thing. So I look up the profile, and I see that he's a CEO. I'm like, dude, there's no way I'm calling this guy. Hell no.
Okay.
And supposing he's an investor, hell no. There's no way he's even hearing from me. So that was how I felt. And then fast forward, I just realized, like, look, the only reason I'm trying to avoid being an SDR right now is because of this one part, which, I fear so much. So the only 2 ways to,
Did you get the date tattoo by any chance, the day when you realize, hey, I suck at cold calling?
So that's the thing I'm coming to, right? Like a lot of folks think like, hey, I dive into sales, things are just gonna be magic, and hey, this is my passion. But here's what I realized, right? So I was trying to get away from sales, and at the same time, I had a really good friend who was like, always gassing me about sales, like, hey, do sales. So here's what I realized, right? It's not like everyone's gonna find something right off the bat. What you have to do is oftentimes, keep surrounding yourself with people who are doing it and people who keep talking about the same stuff. And so here I had this buddy, my colleague right now, and he kept talking about sales every day, and we were sharing, and so that kind of rekindled this whole fire of like, dude, let's just conquer this thing, right? Why am I running away from it? Why am I? And so that's one major step. And even today, like, I don't fear rejections anymore picking up the phone. Like, that's something I don't really care about much. But what I'm getting good at is why I'm getting these guests on the podcast is to actually learn the skill, like how do you maneuver a cold call, how do you go about, because these guests are like,
of course, pros, yeah.
They're doing this for like 27 years and stuff like that. So there's definitely a lot you could learn, and you might want to learn from the best rather than, just trying and failing. So learn from them, implement it. But one thing I'm proud is that, I've gotten rid of that rejection, the fear of rejection. So
awesome. Yeah, I think that's a leap forward, right? It's like something, I'm pretty sure, a lot of people who are watching this, especially SDRs,
right,
they go through this every day. And even managers, I'm pretty sure, who are, struggling to coach their team, tell their team, hey, why cold calling is important. Even though I think every SDR believes that, for example, let's say if I were to interview somebody today and I say, hey, how many cold calls do you make? Nobody would say, hey, I don't make cold calls. I hate cold calls. Nobody would say that.
Right.
And there is nothing I can do as a manager or hiring manager to check whether the person has made cold calls or not. Because even if I were to tell this person, hey, let's do a cold call, I'm pretty sure he'll do a cold call, right?
Exactly.
He will also do the whole objection handling, but there's strictly no way to find that out. And I think after being in this space for some time, I also realized that of course this is important because that's how you get the best meetings, if you ask me, best qualified meetings. If you want to, let's say, have a stronger pipeline, I think cold calling is definitely important. So what are the 5 tips? If 5 tips are too much, you can probably give 3 tips.
Let me see.
For anyone, let's say, who's struggling right now with cold calling, it could be the mindset. I think you're probably a better judge, so yeah.
Yeah, like, so the first thing with, if you're picking up the phone, just first step is like, you're going to screw up your first 100 calls. Doesn't matter. And even post that, you might still screw up calls because there are things that are beyond your handle, and that's absolutely fine. Here's how I, started to enjoy the process. I'm like, the more rejections I get in a day, the more happier I feel. So I'm like, I'm chasing rejections. Now people might say, hey, if you're chasing rejections, your mind is probably trained for rejections. You're going to get more rejections. Could be true, but at the same time, like, at least for me, that's what helped, like, for me to get that leap. So I was just looking at, I'm going to make so many calls today, and if I'm going to get so many rejections, absolutely fine. It's okay if I don't book a meeting, but at least I made that dial. I've, worked on my opener. So that's one tip, embrace rejection. Moving on to the second one, role play. Get a buddy, role play. I think you need to, before you get on the phone with the prospect, at least get your reps in, at least do some 6-7 different role plays, different personas. And my buddies have been really supportive with that. So we keep role playing before our call. And that pumps us up, right? I put him in a different situation where, I'm acting super cocky and, I'm like, hey, I'm going to hang up. And, once I'm super nice. And then, so here's another thing that trains you with, because a lot of sales reps are prepared with objection handling. But as soon as the call goes really well, that's when they start screwing up. They're like, oh, okay, this guy is actually accepting for a meeting. Okay, like, stuff like that. So we do role plays on both the ends of it, like the bad call in. Third, good to have a structure, like, actually check on openers and, tonality. You need to, I think the first 30 seconds, if there's one thing I could ask, even if you, a bad advice, but even if you screw up your value prop, but just keep your opener tight, right? If your opener is, like, you sound like you're energetic and your tonality is right, I think that gives you those extra 30 seconds. Now from there, you can work on the next thing, like moving on from the opener to the problem statement or your value prop. So get the structure. So one is face rejections, get a friend, role play, and get a structure with your cold calls, right? By heart your openers, try multiple different openers, and goes back to what John Barrow says, right? A/B testing. So one of my favorite openers right now has been, hey John, you're probably gonna hate me for this, but this is the cold call which I haven't tried on you, and you were like, that's not something that's gonna run well, which I realized because if you're gonna be calling to other sales folks, it's probably not gonna resonate. And there's this another interesting one which I'm trying out right now is like, hey, this call is as cold as ice. Do you want to hang up, or would you let me a minute to break the ice?
That's new.
Yeah, so that's something that I'm trying. I'm still not fully fluent with that, but that's something I'm trying. But nail your openers. Just by heart it and keep repeating it until it sounds natural, right? You need to nail your openers. That's key, major key.
I think that makes sense. The last point you said about the opener, I really like that, because from where I come from, or probably from where I think, it's like I'm already having a mundane day. I'm already having a monotonous day. Everything what I'm going to do is already planned. And if I'm going to have an obstruction, somebody's going to cold call me, I would rather enjoy it.
Exactly.
Right? And like you said, if you enjoyed yourself, even better.
Exactly.
If you don't, if you believe, you know what, it's a dead-end job for you, and you actually the least you can do is make the other person enjoy the cold call. But I think, opening like this, where, for example, if I were to hear this, I'd be like, okay, this is new, let me give this guy some time.
Right.
But if I were to hear something like, you're gonna hate me, you know what, dude, if you are taking this from, let's say, any XYZ leader, and if this XYZ leader has 50,000 followers, 50,000 people already know about it.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So true.
So I think it becomes even crucial to experiment with your opening.
100%.
I'm not saying that everybody would still know it, but let's say, for example, if you're selling to sales leaders like we do, I think you would try it. You would need to be like at the top of your game every day.
For sure.
Right. So I think it makes sense. I think you get 3 tips, right? Do you have two more?
So I mean, no, I'd just like to dig a little deeper on that opener, because there's this one recent interview with Josh Brown, and I think her name was Kendra Kill, I'm not quite sure, but she had this really funny. First off, she's a really energetic person, and I'll probably tag her later in the video. But here's what her opener is like: "Hey Josh, this is Kendra. I'm at Starbucks ordering an Americano. Like, how are you doing today?" And she's all excited, and she's like, I'm in Starbucks in the middle of a drive-through. Josh, how are you doing today?
Wow. Okay.
And Josh was like, well, what are you ordering? And she's like, I'm ordering an Americano. How's your day going? So,
oh, nice.
Excites people, right? So,
this is different. This is totally different.
Exactly.
I mean, I love that. I think out of all the openings, I think that's even better. You know what? I'm actually starting my day. How are you doing?
Exactly.
So it's stuff like that. I think
I mean, it's more about, it's not about the line you're using. I think
it's also
as long
about,
as you're comfortable.
See, it's at the end of the day. In communication, words do not matter at all, right? It's all about your tonality. It's all about. So I think in communication, as we realize that, I think I don't remember the exact stats, but I think more than 90% is your tonality. How you say things matter. I think we all know this, right? If you ask anybody, hey, do you know that what constitutes the whole communication? Everybody would say, oh, it's tone. But when it comes to actually doing this, people concentrate on words. So I'll give you a different example to this. Everybody, thinks, I need that perfect opener.
Exactly.
So if you ask anybody, why are you not getting success with cold calls? They would say, hey, because I don't have the perfect opener. The chant, like you said, you don't need a perfect opener. What you need is, you definitely need few words. You definitely need probably new words, new sentences to open up. But at the same time, what you need is like more tonality. I think this, and at the same time, it might sound as easy that, hey, it's tonality, I can do it. But if you think about it, when you go deeper into this, you realize, there's too much to it. You want to probably be able to understand people on the other end when you're not able to see them. You want to probably be able to mirror them at times. Maybe bring your tone down when you see they are actually down. Because this is what I see, this is what I hear most of the time when I'm doing the call listening. I realize, hey, my rep is so chirpy, and the prospect on the other end is like almost dead. I'm not saying that, you be dead too, but I'm saying bring your tone down a little, so that you can try to tell the people, hey, I'm with you, man. I know what he's going through. So I think in one of the cold calls, one of my rep actually found a prospect who said, his friend died. And my rep kind of lost it, because my rep had, lost a friend recently himself. Okay. So it took him a lot of courage to actually get back and, finish that cold call. He was able to book a meeting, by the way.
Wow.
So I think, like I said, at the end of the day, it's all communication, but at the same time, it's also about making yourself in control, keeping yourself in control. And this all comes when you invest a lot of time understanding the human emotion. For sure. And I could be probably going overboard with this.
No, I mean, that's key, right? Like, here's the thing. So people think right off the bat they're probably going to get good with the opener, but here's what I suggest. First, at least memorize that line, right? So memorize that line so that you don't skip those words. And then try it with different, inflections, probably with an uptone or however you want to, like, even for that matter, the line that you hate the most, like, hey John, this is Michael here with.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not going to work. I'm saying it's just too overused now.
It's overused. Yeah,
It's
for
it's
sure.
also so for example, anything, and this is something which everybody has to realize, that in sales,
Things get
things change, faster than fashion, right? So fashion might stay a season, fashion might stay a few months.
Right.
Openers like this, the moment so for example, one of the opener I've heard most of the time is, can I have 30 seconds to tell you why I'm calling. While there's a whole lot of science behind it, there's a lot of emotion behind it, there's a lot of theory behind it.
Right.
It's so overused now. When you tell me, can I have 22.7 seconds? When you tell me, can I have 30 nanoseconds or whatever, right?
Right.
You're changing few things again. But if you can do something like this, funny, for example, can I have 22 by 7 seconds?
Yeah.
Which is never ending, right? If you think about pi, right?
It's all pattern interrupt.
Yeah. If you can figure out more ways to pattern interrupt, I think then you've nailed it.
For sure. I mean, that's major key, pattern interrupt. Like, just be creative. I think sales folks do have certain things that have been working for them. So, but just think out of the box. Just do something on your own. Like, there's this another rep, Matt, who had this. He was like, hey, there's so many seconds in a day, like 89,000 seconds. But would you mind if I just took 39 seconds to tell you?
Oh, that's even better.
That's a good one. And even the ones from the sales rebellion, right? Like, hey, can I reinvest 30 seconds in your day to tell you why I'm calling? It's a pattern interrupt. Like, that's
so I think it's all about the pattern interrupt. So maybe someone, let's say, who has not done this before, someone who has relied on a lot of openers from, let's say, sales leaders, or maybe his or her own manager. Mm-hmm. How would you suggest that people look for these pattern interrupts? Or find these pattern interrupts?
Sometimes, I mean, like, to be honest, I mean, I am a huge hip hop fan, so I listen to a lot of rap music. So one thing in rap is word plays, right? So the idea behind, like, hey, this is a cold call, can I break the ice, right? So this call is as cold as ice.
Nice.
Would you want to hang up, or can I break the ice? Now, you just catch on those word plays, and you try playing around the words. But even beyond that, I mean, sometimes, what I've seen people doing this. It's not like I have done this, but I've seen people who are just like, hey, this, like, super excited, like, especially Mark Mack. Like, he just picks up, hey, this is Mark Mack, you haven't heard of him yet? Come on, how can you, like, how have you missed on Mark Mack? And it's just a tonality, and, it's just him being him. So I think you shouldn't really think that much, but at the same time, try something. You're going to fail regardless.
I'm seeing a pattern. I'll tell you where I'm coming from. Mm-hmm. So we have an account executive in our company. I was talking to him about you yesterday. Mm-hmm. He also comes from the same background, like hip hop.
Okay. Interesting.
So I'm pretty sure. I think next new thing in the sales would be, you want to get better at cold calling. Learn hip hop first. So he taught me a thing or two, and I think he also invested some time yesterday into writing our emails, and where we were talking about this pi thing, 22 by 7 seconds.
Right.
And he writes really good emails. So if you like, and he's like, he can write songs on the spot. Like, I'm sure he's that good. So I'm pretty sure, like, I can see a pattern. So I think next episode we can probably learn those tricks.
For sure. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, another thing that kind of, bringing me towards SDR is copywriting. So for you folks who are listening out there, like, if you want to learn how to be creative with your emails, go follow Honey Copy. That's another website called Honey Copy. And there's this copywriter called Cole. And he sends these newsletters on a weekly. There's so much you can learn from those newsletters. Like, those, like, in a pool of all, like, Josh talks about all those white X's, you got to be the red one. Like, his email, even if you've got millions of emails coming from everywhere, I still end up clicking those emails. That's how good his emails are. That's how good his subject lines are. So you guys need to subscribe to that newsletter. So there's a lot from that you can learn. Just reading his letter, right? You could learn a technique or two, like how to infuse humor with your first few lines. Like, one of the mails pretty recently. It's fun. You guys need to just check that out.
Okay.
Because awesome. It's a little on the 18 plus side of things, but he's got some really good humor with his emails.
Okay, I'm glad you said that. So again, though that is a great advice, what I believe is, and this is something which I've realized after, let's say, going through the entire Josh Bond training, is if you realize, his templates are like class apart, no doubt about it.
100%.
But when you go deeper, when you do the training twice or thrice, you realize a pattern. You realize that he has mastered few principles.
For sure.
The desire, how to create that unending desire, right? And I think that is what probably led me to go deeper into these principles, which I believe kind of gives me the confidence. For example, today I would have when I'm writing emails, or when I'm, let's say, doing anything. For example, writing even a post, or doing a video or anything, right? It is. I read this book called The Laws of Human Nature. Okay, I've been reading this for a year. I still haven't finished.
It's Jordan Peterson.
No. This book is by an author called Dr. Robert Greene.
Okay, Robert.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
he is like a master of psychology, you might say. And so he has like I don't even know how many principles are there, because it takes me like 1 week to like read the entire principle, because I'm making notes. I'm going through this. So I would advise, if you really if you think that you wanna be in sales for 2 or 3 years from today, read that book, and just don't read it. Like I said, it's not something which you will finish like a storybook.
Right.
Take 6 months, even a year. Just focus on that book, and I don't think so after that you need to really look for tricks or tips, because now you would have that mindset. I want to create that urgency, or I want to create that desire. Forget urgency. I want to create that desire.
Right.
So it also takes examples from the history as to how people in history were able to do. It talks about how Chanel, when she launched the brand, how she was able to create that desire, then pulled herself from the market, which created that urgency that people actually desired her product even more. It's like the same thing which OnePlus does, right? OnePlus did initially, right?
Yeah,
hey, it's exclusive and by invitation only. People are like, what? It must be something crazy.
Right.
I didn't fall for it. I mean, I didn't like OnePlus from the beginning, but that's a different story. But yeah. So again, and if you understand, if you want to touch the surface, I would say you can start with this book by this guy, The Art of Thinking Clearly. It talks about the biases. It talks about
Daniel Kahneman or something.
No,
that's not the one. Okay,
you're wrong with authors, man.
Oh, I'm terrible with that.
Terrible, yeah. So this book touches like all the biases, like on the very surface. So you'd have to again understand. Okay, this is one bias, and then you have to probably dig deeper into that bias as to how that bias affects us. Okay. So, for example, one of the thing I really admired about that book, or about one chapter, one biases talks about, is the effort justification. So it's like, for example, let's say you have been into sales for 1 year, you've had no success, you were terrible, and now you think, because I've spent 1 year, let me spend 1 more year just to see if things get better. That could be one approach, but if you are taking the decision based on the effort and time you have spent in sales, maybe you're not meant for sales. Maybe you're not good at it. You literally are not good at it. I'm not saying that you can't learn it, but if you think, let's say your passion lies somewhere, but if you think, and 1 year probably is a bad example, let's say you've been into one profession for 4 or 5 years,
right,
and now you're thinking, hey, you know what, is it for me? And that's what actually happens to most of us.
For sure.
So I started in sales very late, and I had the same apprehension that, I've spent majority of my years doing something else.
Right.
Why would I do something like all of a sudden? And that's what probably cripples all of us.
Sure.
So I think, I think everybody should definitely try to master the human emotion versus finding these shortcuts, finding these templates.
That's so true. I mean, that's so true. I mean, I couldn't agree more on that, because end of the day, look, it's people that's going to buy a product. Like they all say, right? It's you're interacting with human. It's not like it's no algorithm. It's no email that you're trying to trick or trying to get past. It's just humans. End of the day. So that's another reason that keeps me, still at sales, because if you master sales or even get like 5% better, you're doing way better than the majority of people. Because end of the day, it's just communication, connecting with people, demonstrating value and stuff like that. So this could not just be in you closing a deal, but even everyday things in your life. Probably, you're negotiating rent with your landlord, or you're just trying to, ask someone out. Like, trains you just to be ready. I think you're so true with that. End of the day, it's all about human connections, and you could have 100 templates, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same damn thing. That's so true.
Yeah, true. I had a question as to how you are a better wordsmith, but I think you already answered that, because that's because of hip hop.
I'd like to think so. I used to write a lot of battle rap back in the day, so a lot of word plays, a lot of similes and metaphors. My skills have been a little rusty, but like I mentioned, Josh Brown was one with copywriting tricks. And at one point in time, right, when I wanted to quit sales, I was looking at copywriting as a career. So then I started digging deep into all these copywriters that you have. And
Any inspiration from Mad Men? Maybe were you trying to be that?
the funny story is I just watched Mad Men 2 months back.
Wow,
So
okay.
I'm pretty new to that, but I've been loving the show, so I've been binge watching that. I think that's the only series I've ever got past 2 seasons because I suck at keeping up with series.
Yeah.
So Mad Men.
I started 6 months ago. I'm still in the 5th or 6th season
Oh, wow.
because sometimes it can get boring. But I think I like anything which is based on 60s or 70s
Exactly.
somehow.
Totally.
Like everything. I don't know. I mean, there's something to it. And the music, if you see, it's like
Especially the outro.
outro, and even if you hear that, there's a song called Babylon.
Okay.
It's like a 70s or 80s song, and they play it on the record, of course,
Okay.
in the series. So it's amazing, yeah.
Oh, I'll keep my eye for
Okay, Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show. Before
Awesome.
we end, we have a rapid fire, just like for everybody. Explain sales in one line, one sentence.
that. People.
Okay, what do you like about sales?
Sell anything.
What do you hate about sales?
Activities.
If you were not in sales, what would you be doing?
Copywriting.
How often do you read?
Every day.
What do you hate about talk shows?
People talk a lot.
Okay, best advice for writing emails?
Just be you. Throw in some humor. Just do your thing. Don't subscribe to any templates and all that. Be you.
Worst call opener?
How are you doing today? Super plain. Not even hey, how are you doing today? Hi John, how are you doing today?
Okay, this was fun, Michael. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It was
Awesome.
great to host you.
Thanks for having me.
And we plan to, we'll see if we plan to release this.
Oh my God.
If it's worthy of our.
It's the salesman brand. Hopefully I made the cut. So.
Yeah.
And until the end.